Why did you decide to seek the full term?
Okay. Well, I would say this to you, Howard. I am been the part-time judge for the past 4 years, but more importantly, I love the law. I love the people of this community. I want to serve them in the best way I think I can. And my qualifications, I believe, having been a defense attorney in the beginning parts of my career, a prosecutor throughout the long-term portion, and now a judge, wearing those 3 hats, I think qualifies me to serve in that role. And having done so for the past 4 years and trained for that, I think it's the best way to continue to serve the community.
What about the job so far have you particularly enjoyed?
I love all the areas. I've had the luxury of being able to preside over all the areas of city court, whether it's veterans court, the treatment courts, housing court, which I've taken that on as a project of mine. I very much enjoy that portion of it. But I love the concept of being able to take cases and not knowing what's going to come in. I guess I would say that when you think of county court, it's somewhat more of a surgery. Batavia City Court is more, I guess I would say, triage, because you never know what you're going to get. And I like that concept of being able to address things immediately on the bench.
Has there been anything about the job, that you found particularly surprising or, more difficult than you anticipated?
Obviously, when you have to make the final decision of incarcerating someone, it's something that's always going to make it difficult. And I guess I would say to you that I don't take that decision lightly. Even though I'm the part-time judge, I come and I read the PSIs and the pre-sentence reports well in advance. I take it upon myself to make sure I know that concept before I ever sentence somebody to incarceration. That's something that's very important to me to know. And it is a difficult decision, but one that has to be done.
What do you see the role of a city court judge in making the city a better place to live, and how do you go about that?
Well, I think the best way to do that is to balance the concept of services and accountability. At the end of the day, if individuals are not compliant with services that you can do and offer, there has to be some form of accountability to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to live in a great community.
So you do have an opponent.
I do.
Were you surprised to find that you'd have an opponent for this job?
Well, yes, I was. I was made aware that my opponent was running, only shortly after I made my announcement, but everyone has their reasons for running, and I certainly don't begrudge any opponent who wants to come forward and challenge. So that's our American way, and I'm hoping that people will look at the qualifications and decide who would be the best for our community.
In the last few days, it seems maybe a week or so, your sign game has picked up, but
yeah,
he was out there pretty early. There's a lot of his signs around.
That's true.
Is this a particularly tough race for you?
I think it will be a tough race, definitely. It'll be a very competitive race. My opponent's well known in the community, but so am I. And I'm hoping that my good work up to this point and the actual experience of being a judge for 4 years will play well with the citizens of Batavia, and hopefully they'll elect me for the full-time position.
What do you think are your qualifications, say, over Mr. Bonaritas?
I think the most important part is the qualification that I've already sat on the bench. Having handled thousands of cases, and I'm humbled by the fact that I haven't had a case overturned at this point, I think that's important. Having the knowledge of how to handle those cases, not just in front of the bench, but behind the bench is the most important. It's not a position I think that anyone could just jump into. I've been training for it for 4 years. I go to specific judicial trainings to assist judges in not only their legal knowledge, but how to address cases. I think that's probably one of the greatest qualifications that sets me apart from my opponent.
People in your campaign, and I think even your campaign itself, have made an issue over the fact that he's running as a Democrat in the Republican primary. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think he's running as a Democrat.
Well, he's a registered Democrat.
He's a registered Democrat.
He's primarying you in the Republican
Sure,
primary.
he's obviously running against me on my Republican line and the conservative line, which I am the endorsed candidate at this point. He certainly has the right to do that. The law allows for that, and I'm not going to begrudge him for doing that. It's his choice. It's not my choice.
Sort of the same question I asked him when I talked, because I came here from California, and when I got the press releases about this campaign, it's the first time I've covered any real judge race in this county, and I am really surprised that these are partisan races. It's not that way in California, and that seems, to me, sets up all kinds of potential conflicts of interest for a judge when you have to go out and ask for endorsements. What are your thoughts on how judicial races are run in New York?
It's certainly a hot topic right now, and so I'm not going to comment on the way judicial races are run. I'll say this, Howard. I don't ask somebody before I sentence them what their political affiliation is. It's not part of a colloquy when you do so, and I would never ask that question. I think the best way to look at how I've been sitting as a Batavia City Court judge is to ask the attorneys and ask everyone else how I've run the court. And I think that most people, if not all, would say that I've been equitable and impartial in doing so. And I'd leave it at that. I think that's how it best should be.
I appreciate what you're saying there, but I think where the potential conflict is when you have to go out and seek a party's endorsement. A lot of times those are the best connected people in the community. They might be landlords. They might wind up with, you might have people that you've asked for endorsements that come before you on landlord cases, for example.
Okay. Well.
Is that, so that's why I'm kind of concerned about how New York is set up, that it creates this kind of potential conflict.
Well, it hasn't created a conflict for me yet, and I don't see it creating a conflict for me. I will take the opportunity to judge every case on its merits, and I'll do so impartially. That's probably the best answer I could give you, and I think the better answer would be take a look at what I've done so far. And I think people would find that I've acted impartially and do so in a way respectfully. I open court on time to try and give everyone that opportunity so that, for instance, if someone is a shift worker, they can always get back to their job. I want to do the best I can to show my respect for the people who appear before me, but at the same time, the concept of dealing with judicial races and what you're posing is not something I think about, because that's not my role. My role is to be impartial, and that's what I do.
You said earlier that you didn't begrudge Ben Bonarigo, running, getting the petitions running, but your campaign has put out, at least one mailer that I'm aware of on this, on this subject to Republicans, saying that basically, you signed a petition for Ben Bonarigo. You may not be aware that he's not a Republican, not the Republican, right, not the endorsed candidate. So it seems to me like you are making an issue of it.
No, let's make it very clear. The only mailing that my committee has put out is a mailing that was to talk about myself and my family. If you're referring to the Republican mailing, that's something that the Republican Party put out. The first time I was made aware of it was when I spoke to somebody on the street about it. So I'd suggest, if you like, speak to the Republican chairperson, and I would make sure that everybody understands that's not something that my committee put out.
So you said just to kind of, and this may be asking to reiterate what you said, but to kind of put a final point on that. So you have no problem with the primary process as it's going. I mean, but I mean that you'd rather not have a primary.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody would not want to have a primary.
But you don't, like you said, you don't begrudge him affording himself the legal opportunity he has.
No one should be begrudged for affording themselves of it. And my point is that hopefully everybody will look at the qualifications and choose the best candidate. Howard, my committee and my campaign is nothing but ethical. We're high road people, and that's all I've ever been. So that's how I'm going to run it. That's how I will continue to run it. I will go door to door to meet people, and if they choose to vote for me, they will. If this is not meant to be, so be it. I will still be in this community. I've raised, with my wife, who's a native of Batavia, 4 wonderful children in this community. So I know the great things about Batavia. I certainly understand the challenges, and I hope people understand that and look for someone who's been a strong family man, a strong person who's been committed to the community, and who's been a judge for 4 years in addition to being a lawyer. That's the only thing I can ask for, and I certainly ask for your vote on June 25th.